All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let's begin. We have a lot to do today. Top of Kuf Yud Ches. We left off in the middle of the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, remember, Rabbi Yehuda's position is that halacha l'maaseh, even on the Bama Gedola, ultimately we only offer up chovos. We only offer up obligatory offerings. This is the sheet that we began to discuss yesterday. So the Gemara says, Elahak Siv, third line down from the top. Elahak Siv Ish. So I'll say, but one second. But yet, both by Moshe Rabbeinu as well as by the pasuk in Shoftim, the Navi uses the lashon Ish, which sounds like, again, Rabbi say that means what? That, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rabbi Yehuda hak siv ish, v'yilav lemiuti af mibama gedola asa, lama li dichsiv ish nichtav kal yasher be'inav. Even the be'inav, so we'll say, the pashtus, is this not talking about the idea? It doesn't ish come to teach me about a bama kitana, or we call it an individual altar, and to teach me that obligatory offerings may not be offered up on a bama kitana. To which the Gemara says, Elahak siv ish, lav lemema the ish yashrosu de likruv, hachavos lo likruv. But we'll say, doesn't the word ish come to teach me that an individual has the ability to offer up non-obligatory karbanos, but chovos he does not offer up? To which the Gemara says, Kik siv ish lahachshir es hazar. So we'll say, Rabbi Yehuda has a very interesting shita. He holds that the word ish comes to go ahead and be machshir azar, to teach you that a non-Kohen has the ability to offer up on a bama. So the Gemara says, Zar mi v'zorak ha-Kohen es hadam al mizbach Hashem nafka. But say, I learn out the fact that a Zar has the ability to offer up on a bama from another pasuk. The pasuk says the Kohen will go ahead and throw the blood on the mizbach Hashem. When is there a din of a Kohen? We'll say, when do you need a Kohen for the avodah? Dafka, when it's mizbach Hashem. But if it's not mizbach Hashem, if it's a bama, then ultimately, again, I don't need a Kohen. To which the Gemara says, I'll tell you, Ma'udetema li by kiddush b'choros kimei kara. So I'll say, I might have thought as follows. I might have thought, you're right. You only need a Kohen, ultimately, again, in the real Mizbeach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before the Ribbon, meaning I only need a Kohen in the Mizbeach that exists before God, which refers either to the Mizbeach of the Mishkan, wherever the Mishkan may be, or the Mizbeach of the Beis HaMikdash. But I might have thought that on a Bama, I should require what it was. It's actually very interesting. I should require Bechoros, a firstborn. That not anyone could do avodah on a mizbeach, but ultimately, again, I need a bechor. Why? Kimei kara. But I'll say, because at least the avodah on a bama should resemble the avodah that once was. And just like in the beginning, before the bechoros were swapped out, so they did the avodah, so too I would have thought that would be the din here as well. Kamash malon, no. Kamash Rabbi say that is not the case. That therefore, Ish comes to teach me, that any individual has the ability to do the avodah on a bama. I chachamim hainu tanakama. To which the Gemara says, but based on what you just said, are the chachamim saying the same thing as the tanakama? Papa says, no, here's the nafkamina. Kervu nisachim bamidbar ika beinahir. Rabbi say the fundamental machlokus between them is where nisachim, wine libations, offered up on the mizbeach in the mishkan in the midbar. Take a look at Rashi. We'll say for just a moment. Rashi says, "Karvu nisacham b'midbar ika benahu." The Rabbanon kamai lo karvu nisacham b'midbar. We'll say according to the Rabbanon, ultimately again, according to the Rabbanon, they did not offer up. I'm sorry, I just lost the place. I'm sorry, yeah. So they did not offer up karbano, they did not offer up nisachim in the midbar, but yet ultimately, again, according to the Tanakama, they did. Fine. Amar Mar, Rabbi Shimon. So we'll say, remember again, the next shita we dealt with was the shita of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, it was a very interesting shita. He says that on the Bama Gedola, they only offered up psachim and chovos shakavua lahen zman. So we'll say a very interesting shita. So remember again, all we're doing now is we're going through the brayso that listed all the different shitos. So again, Rabbi Shimon telling me that in the desert, so I'll say this is the first time we see a qualification on the Bama Gedola. See, up until now, again, everyone was talking about the qualifications as they apply to the Bama Kitana. But Bama Gedola, which also refers again to the centralized altar wherever the Mishkan is. So the Bama Gedola, we always assumed kind of always resembled the Mishkan in the desert. Anything that was Sibor was offered up. Rabbi Shimon comes along and says, no, only karbanos like psachim were offered up, namely, only communal obligatory offerings which have a set time were offered up on the Bama. So it's my time to Rabbi Shimon. So what's Rabbi Shimon's logic? Where does he get this from? D'chsiv, Vayasu b'nei Yisrael as Pasach b'Gilgal. So we'll say it's actually this is a very fascinating sugya. So Klal Yisrael did the Pesach in Gilgal. So remember again, both say Gilgal, cross over the Yarden, come into Eretz Yisrael. First stop is Gilgal. Right? First stop is conquer Yericho, and then Gilgal. So the Gemara says they offered up the Pesach in Gilgal. They offered up the Pesach in Gilgal. So says the Gemara. Pshita. We'll say now that's obvious. In other words, the Gemara says, I don't understand, why does the Torah have to tell me that they offered up the Karban Pesach in Gilgal? In other words, why would we assume otherwise? So we'll say, see, this is amazing. Ella Pshita. So the Gemara says, obviously they offered up the Karban Pesach. It's a communal obligatory offering. What's the Shaila? Ella, here we go. Kamash Malon, Duchovos Kein Pesach Hu Dekarev, Ha Lav Kein Pesach Lo Karev. So we'll say, what the Gemara is pointing out is as follows. If you look through Navi, so does the Navi record every single year that Klal Yisrael went ahead and offered up the Karban Pesach? And the answer is no. Why? Because we assume, of course, Klal Yisrael offered up the Karban Pesach. I was going to say, we don't have to go through the yearly routine, right? It doesn't have to be explicitly articulated in the text. So obviously, I know they did the Karban Pesach. So why does the Navi feel compelled to tell me that when Klal Yisrael came into Eretz Yisrael, they performed the Pesach in Gilgal? Why do you have to tell me that? To which the Gemara answers, or Rabbi Shimon answers, because again, the Torah is teaching, the Navi is teaching me an important lesson, which is that when in Gilgal, when the Mishkan was in Gilgal, which was for 14 years, they only offered up communal offerings like the Karban Pesach. What does it mean, like the Karban Pesach? Karbanos Tzibor, which had a set time. Those were the offerings offered up in Gilgal. Kein Pesach hu dekarev, halav kein Pesach lo karev. Karbanos like the Karban Pesach were offered up in Gilgal, i.e., obligatory offerings with a set time were offered up, but other offerings, even though they were communal obligatory offerings, were not offered up. So we'll say, so what are the other? So fine, that's the sheet of Rabbi Shimon. What do the other opinions do with this? We'll say, this is actually amazing. They needed to teach me the halach of Rabbi Yochanan. What does Rabbi Yochanan say? Then Rabbi Yochanan Mishra Bina Arel Mekabel Hazah. We'll say this is a fascinating halacha. Now, literally, Arel Mekabel Hazah means that if an Arel, who is an uncircumcised individual, becomes Tamei Tumas Meis, you could sprinkle upon him the waters of the Para Aduma, and he becomes tar from Tumas Meis, even though he is still an Arel. Now we'll say, so again, the Havamina is maybe Hazah only works on a person who's circumcised, it doesn't work on a person who's uncircumcised. Kamash no, we learn from here that Hazah, the Paraduma, works even on a person who is uncircumcised. But we'll say, where do we learn that from? This is actually amazing. Look at Rashi, Arel, Shenitma B'meis. It's about 6 lines from before Rashi gets wide, 8 lines. Arel, Shenitma B'meis, Mekabal Hazah. So we'll say, if an Arel becomes Tamei Tumas Meis, he could become purified ultimately again through the sprinkling of the paraduma. To touch other sacrificial items. Here we go. Supposed to say, so the Navi tells you that Klal Yisrael did the Karban Pesach when they were in Gilgal. So the halacha is you cannot go ahead and do the Karban Pesach if you're an Arel. An uncircumcised person is not permitted to take part in the Karban Pesach. So the Gemara says, Veruban, so which means they came into Eretz Yisrael, did Karban Pesach, which means they had Milah. Now we know Veruban Ariel and Hayu b'Midbar. Now we know the majority of Jews were uncircumcised in the desert. How do we know this? Dichsiv lo malu. Because the pasuk tells us that when Yoshua comes into Eretz Yisrael, the first thing they do is mass Milah. There was no Milah in the Midbar. So the reason they didn't do that is because in the Midbar, there was always the potential for travel. Traveling post-circumcision ultimately is dangerous. So they did not do Mila in the desert. So they come into Eretz Yisrael, the first thing they do is mass Mila. Now listen to this. When do we come into Eretz Yisrael? On the 10th of Nisan. So we're coming in 10th of Nisan, the majority of Klal Yisrael is uncircumcised. So what happens? Mishum chulsha dorcha, because again the weakness of the road, which means we don't do bris milah when traveling. Ella bechad srehu demo. So also listen to this. Therefore, they must have, if they came in on the 10th, let's assume for a moment they did a milah immediately. They did milah on the 11th. Va'ashkach ditmei mesim shahayu bahem. Now both say now the assumption is the overwhelming majority of Klal Yisrael were tamei tumas meis. Why are they tamei tumas meis? Shari ruban tamei meisim hayu shemeisim avoseim kol arba'im shana b'midbar v'nitmu ubehem. Avosei is amazing because remember, most of those people who came in had immediate relatives who died in the desert over the course of the 40 years. And therefore, again, the assumption is the children buried the parents. As such, the children were Tamei Meis. So it's just an amazing history lesson here. So the Jews who came into Eretz Yisrael were Tamei Tumas Meis and were also uncircumcised. Ve'im lo kiblu. So now, what's the issue? So fine, Mila can be accomplished with Sum on the 11th. And remember, Karban Pesach has to be offered when? Karban Pesach has to be offered on the 15th, on the 14th in the afternoon. I'm sorry. Therefore, kiblu azah v'nitiru ba'ar lasan. Ein lem shos lahazos mishamalu datzarach lahafrish shlosh yomim bein hazah lahazah revi'i chamishi v'shishi v'kan ilo havu yom echad asar b'nisan hazah rishona la'achar shamalu su lo matiz man hazah. So also listen to this. You need a minimum of 3 days in between sprinklings for the para aduma. So for the para aduma. So therefore, again, what the Gemara suggests is as follows: If you have to be circumcised for the sprinkling of the para aduma, then there is no way that they could have offered up the Karban Pesach ultimately again on that first year. In order for them to offer it up on that first year, it had to be that the first sprinkling was done when they were still uncircumcised. So therefore, again, Avosai, even though Rabbi Shimon is going ahead and learning out, that halacha lemaisa in Gilgal, they only did time-bound obligatory karbanos based on the fact that the Navi tells me that they did the Karban Pesach in Gilgal. Therefore, again, so the other opinion of Osei says that no, Rabbi Yochanan says that from this pasuk we learn something else, which is that an Arel Mekabal Hazah, that you could even do the sprinkling of the Para Aduma on an Arel, and his Arel status does not prevent the waters of the Para Aduma from affecting not a kapara, but to affecting Tara, purity within him. Incredible. I was very struck by this only because this particular halacha also contains a dramatic amount of history. Right, their ancestors were uncircumcised for 40 years. For 40 years, children born in the desert did not have bris milah. They were all tamei meis, ultimately because they were burying their parents in the desert over the course of that time. But yet the halacha is that even in Arel is makabel hazah. Tani Tana Kamei Rav Acha bar Abba. So I'll say ultimately again. So the Tana taught this before Rav Acha bar Abba. Ein bein bama gidola le bama kitana. So we'll say there is. So again, remember now we're teaching this. The Tana teaches before Rav Acha bar Abba. There is a difference between a bama gidola and a bama kitana. Ella Pesach v'chovos hakavur lenzman. So we'll say this reflects the view of Rabbi Shimon. That ultimately, what? There is no difference between a bama kitana and a bama gidola, except Pesach and chovos hakavur lenzman, which means that on a bama gidola, the only thing you are offering up are not only obligatory karbanos, but time-bound obligatory karbanos. We'll say this is the shita of Rabbi Shimon. Amar lei titargim mas nisach ba'olas chova. So we'll say, he said to him, so explain your brayso as referring to ultimately again an olas chova, diika olas nedava. Because I will say, in other words, when looking ultimately again for which types of karbanos, it would be interesting to see situations where there is a parallelism, where same type of carbon, same min of carbon, could be offered up on a bama gidola and a bama kitana. So, for example, I will say an olas chova could be technically offered up on a bama gidola, and the same type of ola could be offered up as an adava on a bama kitana. So I'll say, so the Masoret Hashas now changes the next phrase. It reads, di chatos nedava mi'ika. Because we'll say, if it was in terms of a chatos, there's no such thing as a chatos nedava, and because of that, it can never be offered up ultimately again on the bama kitana. So the chatos nedava mi'ika v'lukma b'minchas chova. So why don't you go ahead, I will say, and set it up as dealing with a case of an obligatory mincha, d'ha'ika chavitin. Because I will say there's the case of the carbon chavitin, which is the mincha of the kohen gadol, to which the Gemara says kasavar a mincha bebama. Because I will say this particular opinion is of the opinion which we saw before that menachos were not offered up on a bama at all. Fine. So this concludes the braysa's investigation of the various shitos. So I'm just pointing out, it is fascinating to see that we have just a dramatic historical machlokes about what was done during the period of Bamos. What was permitted, and again I will say this really refers specifically to two periods of time, which is the period of Nov and Givon, which was for for Gilgal, which was for 14 years, and for Nov and Givon, which we'll discuss, was for 57 years. These were the periods of time where the Mishkan was impermanent. Because obviously in the desert, even though, again, at the end of the day, the Mishkan was impermanent, it had the status of a permanent structure, and in Shiloh, for 369 years, it also has the status of a permanent structure. So really, again, this four-way machlokes that we discussed is what are you allowed to do in a time, essentially, when bamos are permitted. When I have when I have a license for an individual altar, so what is permitted on the individual altar, which there seems to be a general level of consensus with, although there's some machlokes in the details, versus what is permitted ultimately again on the Bama Gidola. Good. So it says the Gemara, Baal to Shiloh. So let's remember again, now we come to Shiloh. So now in Shiloh, what's happening? So remember the Gemara said, what was the Gemara? The Mishnah said, that when they came to Shiloh, Ne'esra Bamos, number one, Bamos become Mu'asr. Number two, V'lo hayasham tikra ela beis havanim bilbad. So we'll say the next thing is that in Shiloh there were stone walls, but there was no permanent roof. So it says the Gemara, where do we know ultimately again that there were stone walls but no permanent roof? Amar Rabbi Ava, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kasav Echad Omer, Vativieu Beis Hashem Shiloh. So we'll say one pasuk says that ultimately again they brought the Aron to the Beis Hashem Shiloh. This is actually talking about not the Aron. Shmuel Hanavi, well, little Shmuel. When Shmuel was a little boy, his mother, after he was 3 years old, brought him to the Beis Hashem in Shiloh. So we'll say one pasuk calls it a bayis. The Kasav Echad Omer, Vayitosh es Mishkan Shiloh. And we'll say the second pasuk says, Vayitosh Mishkan Shiloh. The Chalash Baruch Hu abandoned the Mishkan and Shiloh. So he calls it a Mishkan. Mishkan, we'll say, is a tent. So which one is it? Is the Mishkan ultimately, again, is the Mishkan a bayis, or is the Mishkan or is the Shiloh a Mishkan? Is Shiloh a home or is Shiloh a tent? So we'll say the nafkamina, of course, would be that a home presumably has a roof, right? A tent does not. Oh well, so the Gemara says, Vayitosh Mishkan Shiloh. So he's quoting over here the pasuk from Tilim. Oh well, Shikein ba'adam uksiv Vayimas ba'ohel Yosef uv'shevet Ephraim lo bachar. So okay, so we'll say, how do we reconcile these two ideas? Was Shiloh considered to be an ohel, or was Shiloh considered to be a bayis? Haketzad lo haisa sham tikra. So we'll say the reconciliation is very simple. It didn't have a roof. Ela avanim milamaton v'yirios milamalon v'haisa menuchar. What did it have? It had stone walls on the bottom, and it had a cloth roof. So as such, again, this is the reconciliation. It is called ultimately an ohel because it did not have a permanent roof, but it is called a bayis because it had permanent stone walls. Good. And this vihi haisa menucha, and I will say Shiloh is what we refer to ultimately again as menucha. Remember again, this is when Moshe Rabbeinu says in his pasuk, or tries to remind us that the things that we do in the desert, we will not be able to do ultimately when we come into Eretz Yisrael from a sacrificial purpose. Kilo basem el menucha v'al Moshe Rabbeinu refers to two places where ultimately again the Mishkan will enjoy the same status as it did in the deserts. One is called menucha, one is called nachala. The Gemara comments that when the Mishkan was in Shiloh, that was the period of menucha. Nachala ultimately refers to the period of the Beis HaMikdash. Next, Kodshei Kadosh. So what's the next part of the Mishnah is that the Mishnah says Kodshei Kadoshim nechal lifnei ma'akelayim. When the Mishkan was in Shiloh, Kodshei Kadoshim were consumed inside of the curtains. The Kodshim Kalim u'Meiser Sheni b'chol haroah. Now we'll say this is actually interesting. So Kodshim Kalim and Meiser Sheni were eaten b'chol haroah, which meant I will say that you didn't have to be inside of the Mishkan, but rather anywhere where you were, as long as you were able to see Shiloh, you were able to eat, able to see the Mishkan and Shiloh, you were able to go ahead and eat Kodshim Kalim and Meiser Sheni. So says the Gemara, from where do we know this? So we'll say the idea that Kachim Kadashim could only be eaten within the Kilayim, that I don't need a pasuk teacher. We'll say that's Temple Law 101, right? Kachim Kadashim could only be eaten ultimately inside the curtains of Shiloh. But what about Kachim Kala Ma'aser Sheni can be eaten b'chol roeh, anywhere where you can see Shiloh? Where do we know that from? So it says the Gemara Moshe the Amar Kra Hishamar Lacha Pentala Olosecha b'chol makom asher atat tira. So we'll say, so the pasuk says, be careful, lest you go ahead and offer up your karbanos in any place which you are able to see. Now, what is it in the Gemara Darshans? B'chol makom asher tira iatamala. Torah is telling me, I will say, that just because I could see the makom hamishkan, I am not allowed to offer up karbanos there. Aval ata ochel b'chol makom she'ata roeh. But you can eat it wherever you're able to see it. So we'll say, so the fact that the Torah explicitly says you can't offer up karbanos even if you could see the makom hamishkan tells me I can't offer up karbanos just based on being able to see the makom hamishkan, but I can eat karbanos as long as I can see the makom hamishkan. I ema b'chol makom shatara iyata ma'ala aval ata zavech b'chol makom shatira. Maybe not. Maybe what Torah is coming to teach you, I will say, is what? It's true. You can't offer up karbanos in a place where you could see the Mishkan from, but maybe you can slaughter karbanos. In other words, I can't sacrifice. I can't go and put on the Mizbeach just because I can see the Makom Mishkan. Offering, ha'alah, has to be done on the Makom Mishkan. Maybe slaughtering could be done anywhere where there is a ocular connection between myself and the Mishkan. To which the word Rabbi Yanai Amakra Sham Ta'ala V'Sham Ta'aseh. We'll say the pasuk. So therefore, Rabbi Yanai says the pasuk links Ta'ala, Aliyah, and Asiyah. Aliyah Rabbi refers to the actual offering up of the carbon. Asiyah refers to the shechting of the carbon. So pretty much wherever you could offer it is where you could shecht it. Wherever you can't offer it, you can't shecht it. Therefore, if I can't offer it just because I could see the makom hamishkan, I can't shecht it there either. Yet, Torah's clearly coming to tell me I can't do something, but by inference I can do something else. What's the something else I can do? Achila. So therefore I will say the halacha is, therefore the Gemara learns out from here, that the halacha is that although I can't offer up and I can't shech the carbon outside of the confines of the Mishkan, I am permitted to eat it, I am permitted to eat the carbon ultimately again wherever I could see the Makom HaMishkan. Rav Avdimi Bar Chasa Amar Kra, the pasuk says, we'll say Amud Beis, Velo Tanas Shiloh. We'll say we're going to get to some really beautiful Gemara. Velo Tanas Shiloh. So we'll say, actually Rashi points out over here, Chipastiv velo matzasev b'mikra. There's no such pasuk that the Gemara just quoted. There's no such pasuk that says velo sa'anas shil. Rashi says, I want to tell you, I looked it up. Velo matzasev. I didn't find the pasuk b'mikra. Ava matzasev mizracha ta'anas shilo. What he did find, Rabosai, is the phrase in Yoshua mizracha ta'anas shilo. Rabosai, actually, the important part that we're focusing on is this phrase of sa'anas shilo. So listen to this. Makom shekalaroa oso misaneach alav alachilas kadshem shelo. So I'll say ultimately again it means literally a place shekalaroa where anyone sees it misaneach alav. Rashi says ta'anas lashon taniya va'aniya shayim misanchin v'rosh misham hayuzochrin achilas kadshem sheisamakam arisa. So we'll say listen to this. So why is Shino called Sashi? It's a place where people sigh. Why? Because when they come and they see the place and they remember what was there, they sigh, remembering the fact that they were able to eat karbanos just by looking at the place. So I'm just bringing another drasha to support this idea, where ultimately, again, when it came to Shiloh, as long as you were in sight of Shiloh, you were permitted to eat your kachim kalim and your ma'aser sheni. Rabbi Avo Amar Kra, Ben Porat Yosef, Ben Porat Ale Ayin. So we'll say, so remember again, this is in the brachos of Yaakov Avinu to Yosef, right? Calls him Ben Porat Yosef, literally again, the son, the fruitful son Yosef, Ben Porat Ale Ayin. The fruitful son Ale Ayin, Rabosai, means he rises above the eye. What does that mean? Ayin shelo ratzas alazon, or lehanos midavar sheno shalo, the eye which would not benefit from something that was not his. Rabosai, a reference to Eshes Potifar, that although Yosef had the ability to sin with the wife of Potiphar, he did not do so. Tiske v'tochal kimale eineho. Ultimately, again, has the ability to benefit and to eat as far as the eye can see. Now what is this a reference to? So remember again, the Mishkan Shiloh was in the tribal portion of Ephraim, which is one of the sons of Yosef. So essentially, the Mishkan of Shiloh was in the tribal portion of Yosef. Obviously, there's no tribal portion of Yosef. Yosef becomes Menashe and Ephraim. It was in the tribal portion of Ephraim. So the Gemara darshans over here so beautifully that in the schus that Yosef would not set his eyes upon something that was not his, i.e. Eshes Potifar, he's rewarded by having the Mishkan in his tribal portion. And I will say, what's the halacha with the Mishkan? That essentially you could eat as far as the eye can see. In other words, as long as you could see Mishkan, as long as you could see the Mishkan, you were permitted to go ahead and consume your Kachim Kalim and your Ma'aseh Sheni. Very beautiful Gemara. In the schus of not looking upon that which was not his, ultimately, again, he is rewarded with a mishkan, which ultimately allows one to consume kachim kalim and ma'aser sheni for as far as the eye can see. Quite beautiful. So Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina Omer, v'uritzon shochne sneh. So when the pasuk says, uritzon shochne sneh, so we'll say, literally it means uritzon, the will, shochne sneh, those who dwell in the thorn bush. So we'll say, what does this mean? Ayin shalo ratzasa lechanos midarashinu shalo. The eye, Yosef, who would not benefit from something that was not his, tiske v'tochal bin hasnuin. We'll say we'll have the privilege to eat between those who hate him. So ultimately, it's actually quite a sad pasuk. The Gemara's understanding over here, uritzon shochne sneh. Shochne sneh is a reference to the fact that Yosef's tribal portions are amongst those who historically hated him. His brothers hated him. Rashi says, Ben Asnuim, Shiloh, Kadashav Ne'achal, and Af Bigvule Shar Shratim Shason. So remember again, what we just established is that halacha l'maisa, you can eat kachim kalim and ma'aser sheni from anywhere where you can see Shiloh. And we'll talk about this. You were able to see Shiloh even from the tribal portions of the other brothers. So amazingly enough, Yosef, right, you're able to eat karbanos even when you're dwelling in the portions of those who historically hated him. It's terribly sad pasuk. Tana Rosh Amru. So we'll say when we say that if you see Shiloh, that you can go and eat kachim kalim and ma'aser sheni. Kulo v'loha mafsik beino lebeino. But it has to be an unobstructed view of Shiloh. Right? It can't be that it's an obstructed. You can only eat if you have an unobstructed view of Shiloh. Amar li Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim Rabbi Lazar. Asar b'lecha. I'll give you an example of this. Kigon knishta be knishta de ma'on. The example would be if you go into the shul of Ma'on. If you go into the shul of Ma'on, that gives you an unobstructed view of Shiloh. So Amar Rav Papa v'rosh amru lo ro'a kulo elo ro'a miktsasa. Rabbi say, interestingly enough, Rav Papa comes along and says, but you don't have to have a full view. Even if you just see some of the Mishkan, an unobstructed view of some of the Mishkan, that is enough. So by Rav Papa asked the Shaila, Omeid v'ro'a yoshev in ro'a mai. So what happens if when I'm standing up, I can see the Mishkan, but I'm sitting down, I can't? We'll say, what happens if I'm standing up on the edge of the river, I can see it. But if I'm not on the edge of the river, but if I'm sitting down in the river, I can't see it. So we'll say, what's the halacha in these cases? Teku, okay. Kiyos Rav Dimi Amar Rebbe, B'shlosha Mekamos Sharsa Shechina Al Yisrael. So what's comes on Rav Dimi? Says in the name of Rebbe that in 3 different places the Shechina rested upon Klal Yisrael. What are the 3 places? Nov v'Givon. So B'Shilo. So number 1, Shiloh. Nov and Givon. I will say Nov and Givon, as you've already seen, are always grouped together. We'll discuss why they're always grouped together. Nov and Givon, Ubeis Shalom and the Beis Hamikdash. So say these are the 3 places where the Shechina rested upon Klal Yisrael. I'm sorry. So the Gemara doesn't count Gilgal. We'll discuss why that is. So Nov, Shiloh, Nov and Givon, and Beis Olamim. Ubekulon, and in all of these places, Lo Shar Sa'ela Bechilik Binyamin. And here's the interesting place. Here's the interesting idea. All 3 of these places are in the Chilik of Binyamin, although we're going to qualify that statement in just a moment. So amazingly enough, the Shevet of Binyamin has the great schus that the Rebbeinu Shalom always rests his presence in their Chilik. Shene Emar, as the pasuk says, Chofeif Alav Kol Hayom. So we'll say literally again, Chofeif means he hovers above him the whole day. Kol Chafifos, we'll say now again, remember this is in the bracha, this is in Vizos HaBracha, right? So this is in Moshe Rabbeinu's brachos to Shevet Binyamin. Chofeif Alav Kol Hayom Kol Chafifos Lo Yehu Ela Bechelko Shel Binyamin. Ultimately, again, whenever God hovers in this world, all divine hoverings will be over Binyamin. Ki Azal Abayi Amra Kamei Rav Yosef Amar Chad Birahava Havalei Lech Lo V'Lo Miskan. So we'll say, listen to this. I should say, Chad Bira Have Lekailil V'Lo Miskan. So we'll say, so this is actually very interesting. So Abaye said over this ruling. Remember again, this was said by Rav Dimi. So Rav Dimi said in the name of Rebbe that again, Shechina rested in 3 places, and in all 3 places in the Shevet of Binyamin. Abaye said this over in front of Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef didn't like it. Rav Yosef said, you see, Kailil, we'll say Kailil was Abaye's father. Kailil had only one son, V'lo Miskan. And you know what? His son just didn't get it right. In other words, Lo Bavashtach. Right? So Kailil only had one son, Abaye, and Abaye just can't get it right. In other words, your teaching is wrong. V'haksiv vayitosh es mishkan Shilo, uksiv vayimas bo'ol Yosef u'b'shevet Ephraim. So I'll say ultimately again, the pasuk says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu abandoned the Mishkan and Shiloh, and it says he was disgusted ultimately again by the oil and Yosef and by Shevet Ephraim, which I will say tells you what? That the Mishkan, at least in Shiloh, was not in the tribal portion of Binyamin, but rather where was it? Where was it? In Ephraim. So how can you say that, we have a Mefurish pasuk I will say that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu left the oil Yosef, which was in Shevet Ephraim. So how can you tell me that the Mishkan ultimately again was always in the tribal portion of Binyamin? Here the pasuk explicitly says it was in the tribal portion of Ephraim. So the Gemara says at the end of the pasuk is B'Shevet Ephraim LeBachar Amar Rav Ada Mai Kashile Dilma. Maybe what it means as follows: Dilma Shechina Bechilik Binyamin V'Sanhedrin Gedola Bechilik Yosef. I'll say maybe what it means is as follows: that the Mishkan actually straddled 2 areas. The area where the Shechina itself rested, that was in the Chelik of Binyamin. But also we know historically, the Sanhedrin HaGadol always resided in the area of the Mishkan. So maybe what it means is as follows: the Shechina resided in the Chelik of Binyamin. The High Court, the Sanhedrin HaGadol, that sat in the Shevet of Yosef. Or as the building was, obviously it's one structure, and it just, or it just protruded, right? It straddled, right? One part, the Shechina was in the Shevet of Binyamin. The Sanhedrin HaGadol ultimately again was in the Chelek of Yosef. Now we'll say, where do we get this model from? Now working backwards, so we'll say, because we know this in the Beis Hamikdash, Rabbi said, we know that the Beis Hamikdash itself straddled 2 tribal areas. The area of the Shechina rested in the area of Shevet of Binyamin, but yet the Sanhedrin sat in the tribal area of Yehuda. So Amalei, so I'll say, here's the problem. That's a nice solution for the Beis Hamikdash. Why? Amalei haki hashta hasam mikarva nachalos gabi hadadi. So we'll say that works fine because the tribal areas of Yehuda and Binyamin are right next to each other. So you could have a Beis Hamikdash that straddles 2 tribal areas. Hacha mi mekarvan. I will say over here, you're going to say that the tribal areas of Ephraim and Binyamin are next to each other. So Gemara says, yes, hachanai mekarvan. Yes, in fact, again, they do straddle each other. Why? Kidam Rabbi Chaim Bar Mechanina ritzua haisa yotzes michelko shel Yehuda v'nichneses lechelko shel Binyamin. So we'll say ultimately again, there was a ritzua, a little strip of land, which extended from the tribal area of Yehuda and went into the tribal area of Binyamin. Uba haya mizbeach banui. And I will say it was actually on that Binyamin strip. It was on that Yehuda strip that entered into the tribal area of Binyamin that Binyamin was very upset about. V'haya Binyamin atzadik mitztar aleh labala. We'll say the Shevet of Binyamin, or the Gemara phrase as Binyamin atzadik, was always very upset that there was a little strip of Shevet Yehuda land which extended into the tribal area of Binyamin, and it was upon that strip that the Mizbeach, that the altar was built. And Binyamin was always upset, trying to figure out ways to what? How do we? Jews are always buying real estate, right? So how do we go ahead and purchase that real estate? Again, it disrupts our what's the word? Continuity, right? Our tribal continuity, our real estate continuity. Hachanami, so too by the Mishkan Rabosai, Ritzua Haise Yotzeis Michelko Shal Yosef, Lechelko Shal Binyamin. Rabosai, there was a little strip of land that ultimately went from the Chelek of Yosef, which was really in this context in the tribe of Ephraim, into the tribal area of Binyamin. V'hainu dichsev ta'anas Shiloh. And I will say this ultimately again. This was the sighing of Shiloh. I will say what was the sighing of Shiloh? That Binyamin was very upset. Right, Binyamin was very upset because they wanted somehow to recapture this little strip of land. So there was a strip of land from Ephraim that ultimately extended into Binyamin that also housed part of the Mishkan. And therefore, again, Binyamin was always upset. Binyamin was always sighing because they wanted to get back to the little strip of land. Or as I say, Binyamin wants to have the totality of the Mishkan reside on its tribal land. It doesn't want to share the real estate of the Mishkan with anyone else. So Kitanai, so we'll say what we see over here is that there seems to be a fundamental machlokes as to where exactly the Mishkan was situated. Now we know the Mishkan is situated in Shiloh. The question is, was this all the tribal area of Binyamin, specifically Ephraim, or was this shared ultimately again with Binyamin? So we'll say so we see again we have conflicting psukim that seem to tell us that on one hand Chofeif Alav Kalayom, which seems to tell me that wherever the Shekhinah resided, it was always in Binyamin, which seems to tell me that at least some part of the Mishkan was on the tribal area of Binyamin. Yet, what Rabbi say, we see again clearly that the pasuk in Tilim and other places in the Mishkan was in the tribal portion of Shiloh. So we'll say, the easiest, the tribal portion, the Shiloh resided in the tribal portion of Ephraim. So was it in Ephraim? Was it on Binyamin? It's a machlokes. Kitanoi. So here we go. Kitanoi. Chofeif alav. When the pasuk says that the Shekhinah hovers above it, right? It was a reference to Shevet Binyamin. So Chofeif alav zem mikdash rishon. This refers to mikdash rishon. Kol hayom zem mikdash sheni. Ubein keseifav, and between its shoulders shachin res elu yemos hamashiach. This refers to the Messianic era. Rebbe says Ubein keseifav shalem. When it says that no rest between its shoulders, this is a reference to Messianic era. Rebbe Omer Chofeif alav zeh olam hazeh kol hayom elu yemos hamashiach. Ubein keseifav shachin zeh ha'olam haba. Ultimately, again, what is this a reference to? This is reference to Lamba. So we'll say the fact that one of the opinions ultimately again refers that Chofeif alav is olam hazeh indicates to us that what? That any place goes in accordance with the opinion that any place where the Shekhinah rested was always in the tribal portion of Binyamin. Rashi says ha'olam hazeh kol makom sheshar Shekhinah v'ashilo v'nov v'givon. So we'll say, therefore, again, machlokes tanoim. Do we say that everywhere the Shekhinah resided in this world was always in the tribal portion of Binyamin or not? Fundamental machlokes. So we'll say, so here's what we know. We know that, of course, the Mishkan resided in Shiloh. That, of course, we know. The shaila is, did some part of Shiloh. And we know that Shiloh was historically in the tribal portion of Ephraim. The question is, was there some part of the Mishkan which somehow straddled the tribal portion of Binyamin as well? Machlokes tanoim. Good. Tan Rabbanon. I will say first of the intermediate wide lines. Tan Rabbanon. Here we go. Tan Rabbanon. Yimei o hamoed shel midbar arbaim shana chaser achos. I will say the Mishkan stood for 39 years. For 39 years in the desert. Yimei o hamoed shel b'Gilgal. We'll say the Mishkan in Gilgal stood for Arba Esrei, stood for 14 years. Where do we get 14 years from? Zayin shekavshu v'zayin shechilku. 7 years where they conquered Eretz Yisrael, 7 years where they divided Eretz Yisrael. Yimei o hamoed shel b'Nov Givon. We'll say the Oamoid, the Mishkan stood in Nov and Givon for 57 years. Nishtayru l'Shilo Gimel Meos Shivim Chaser Achas. Therefore, I will say in Shiloh the Mishkan stood the first of the widest lines for 370 years minus 369 years. So we'll say here is the entire timeline of the Mishkan. Yemei also, let's analyze this. Yemei Oamoid Midbar Arbaim Chaser Achas Minala, and I will say how do we know that the Mishkan stood for 39 years in the desert? So you will say we say 40. It's really 39 years in the desert. How are we doing this? From Damar Mar, Shana Rishona Asa Moshe Asa Mishkan. So we'll say Moshe made the Mishkan in the first year of our sojourn in the desert. Shniya Hokam HaMishkan. In the second year, ultimately again Moshe Rabbeinu set up the Mishkan. Remember again, the Mishkan of Osai is made in the aftermath of the Chet HaEgel. In that same year, Moshe Rabbeinu sends the spies. Moshe ben Shalom, and again, I'll say, remember, and then you have the Gzeira ultimately again of the Meraglim for 40 years. Now we go in the 40th year. Therefore, it turns out that the Mishkan stood for 39 years in the desert. Next, Shebe Gilgal Arba Asrei Shana. So we'll say in the Gilgal, the Mishkan stood for 14 years. Sheva Shekivshu v'Sheva Shechilku Minoah. So we'll say, where do we get 14? 7 years that they conquered the land, 7 years they divided the land. We'll say, what do you know? So the Amar Kalev, because Kalev said, Ben Arba'im Shana Anochi Bishloach Moshe Eved Hashem Osim Mikadish Barnei L'Ragel Es Haaretz. We'll listen to this. Va'ashev Osod Davar Kashem Lebavi. So we'll say, so Kalev telling over in Sefer Yoshua, telling over the story, Kalev says, I was 40 years old when Moshe Rabbeinu first sent me to go ahead and spy out the land. And I came back and I gave a proper report as was in my heart. Va'uksiv, now the pasuk says, Va'ata hinei anochi hayom ben chamesh ushmonim shana. Now, I am 85 years old. I'm 85 years old. Ki avrei liyarden, when Kalev crossed over the Yarden, Bar Kamahavi, how old was he? Shivim v'tamni. He was 78 years old. V'ka'amar ben chamesh ushmonim shana harishev shkivso. So I will say, what's the 7 years between he crossing over and when he's speaking to Klal Yisrael? Those are the 7 years in which they conquered the land. He was 78 years old ultimately when they came into Eretz Yisrael. He's 85 when he's giving this speech. And therefore, we'll say, where are those 7 years? Those are the 7 years of conquering the land. So that tells you the 7 years of conquering the land. What about the 7 years of dividing up land? I'll say, where do I know those from? So the first answer is interesting, is a svara. If it took them 7 years to conquer, it took them 7 years to divide, which I will say, by the way, is such a dramatic statement, right? It takes 7 years to do war, and it takes 7 years to decide who's going to get which piece of land, right? An incredible, incredible musar. So it took 7 years to drive out every single kingdom in Eretz Yisrael. Took them another 7 years to go and divide land. But see, the other possibility is because, remember, the pasuk itself says, the pasuk in Yechezkel talks about after 14 years after they had originally conquered the city. So the Navi Yechezkel tells us that they were only settled after 14 years. Now we know that 7 of those years were conquering. How do we account ultimately again for the remaining 7 years? It must be what? That those were the 7 years ultimately that they divided up the land. Oel moed shebeno v'givon chamishim mishava minal. And Rabbi says, so we now know. So Rabbi says, so now we have 39 years in the desert, 14 years in Gilgal. The 14 years made up of 7 years of kibush, 7 years of chiluk. So we'll say, so, okay, you know what, actually we'll stop over here for today. We'll Emirat Hashem pick up at the 2 dots of the Ol Moed Sheba Nova Givon, the 57 years in Nova Givon, Emirat Hashem tomorrow. Shkoyach.